Assalamu alaikum, this is Fahmid Islam and you're watching Millennium Headlines News. This week's headlines are: Obama unveils wage insurance plan to spur job seekers. US hopes Saudi Arabia may reopen Tehran embassy. Chinese leader in Iran to discuss economy, regional crisis, State TV. Haiti postpones Sunday's presidential election as violence erupts. Gunman kills 4 in Canada's school shooting. We'll get through the storm, New Jersey governor says. Monster storm hits US East Coast. Freezing temps threaten asylum seekers in Europe. US Coast Guard rescues 2 mariners off the Washington coast. Mexico's Colima or fire volcano erupts. Bitter cold in Europe, but the migrants keep coming. Clearing out in Calais. US President Barack Obama lays out a plan to help support the income of workers who lose their jobs and end up in lower paying positions as part of a broader effort to overhaul the unemployment insurance system. US President Barack Obama on Saturday laid out a plan to help support the income of workers who lose their jobs and end up in lower paying positions as part of a push to get unemployed Americans back to work. The proposal would offer inexperienced workers who now make less than $50,000 a form of wage insurance, allowing them to replace half of their lost pay. The benefit would cover up to $10,000 over 2 years. It's a way to give families some stability and encourage folks to rejoin the workforce, because we shouldn't just be talking about unemployment, we should be talking about re-employment. Obama said in his weekly radio and internet address broadcast on Saturday, "I believe we have got to take steps to modernize our unemployment insurance system. If a hard-working American loses her job, regardless of what state she lives in, we should make sure she can get unemployment insurance and some help to retrain for her next job," he said. The wage insurance proposal will be included in a broader effort to overhaul the unemployment insurance system. Details about the program's proposed funding will be further outlined in Obama's budget for fiscal year 2017, expected to be released next month. Obama promised in his State of the Union earlier this week to advocate for legislative action on issues with bipartisan support during his last year in office. During the address, he pointed to wage insurance as one measure where lawmakers may be able to work together. The White House plan would require states to provide insurance for workers laid off from jobs they had held for at least 3 years. The plan would be federally funded, but it would be administered through state unemployment insurance programs. Other measures proposed by the White House on Saturday included a requirement that all states provide at least 26 weeks of unemployment insurance benefits, and the creation of a permanent program that would automatically provide up to 52 additional weeks of federally funded benefits for states experiencing rapid job losses or high unemployment.
Replace half of their lost wages, up to $10,000 over 2 years. That's how we make sure that hardworking families can get ahead, and that's what I'll be fighting for with every last day of my presidency. Thanks, everybody.
The United States hopes that Saudi Arabia may restore diplomatic ties with Iran, a senior State Department official said by phone on Friday ahead of Secretary of State John Kerry's Saturday visit to Riyadh. Tensions between bitter regional rivals Saudi Arabia and Iran escalated this month after Riyadh's execution of a Shiite Muslim cleric triggered an attack by Iranian protesters on its Tehran embassy, leading the kingdom to cut diplomatic ties. However, the U.S. official said Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei's statement of regret this week over the embassy storming, which Riyadh accused Tehran of tacitly encouraging, was significant. Iran denies the allegation. Hopefully, maybe that will open up the possibility that the situation will resolve and that the Saudis will find their way forward in reopening their embassy in Tehran, he said. Chinese President Xi Jinping arrived in Tehran on Friday to discuss improvement of economic and political ties after lifting of international sanctions because of Iran's disputed nuclear program, State TV said. Xi will meet top Iranian officials, including the country's most powerful figure, Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, and President Hassan Rouhani. He has also visited Saudi Arabia and Egypt during his Middle East tour, which started on January 19. A high-ranking political and economic delegation is accompanying the Chinese president during his one-day trip. State television quoted Deputy Foreign Minister Ibrahim Rahimpour was saying, This is the first visit by a Chinese president in 14 years. Total trade between Iran and China stood around $52 billion in 2014, but it dropped last year because of falling oil prices, Rahimpour said. Some 16 accords, including a strategic cooperation agreement, will be signed during the Chinese president's Iran visit. The Chinese president is the first leader to visit Iran after international sanctions were lifted on January 16 under a nuclear deal reached with 6 major powers, including China. Muslim Shiite Iran and its regional Sunni rival Saudi Arabia, Xi's first stop on his Middle Eastern tour, have been at odds since Saudi authorities executed Shiite cleric Nimr al-Nimr on January 2. The execution triggered outrage among Shiites across the Middle East. Riyadh severed ties with Tehran after Iranian protesters stormed the kingdom's embassy in Tehran and its consulate in Mashhad. China has called on both countries to exercise calm and restraint amid their ongoing feud. Haiti called off its presidential election on Friday, 2 days before it was due, over concerns of escalating violence sparked by the opposition candidate's refusal to take part in a process he said was riddled with fraud. Pierre-Louis Aupont, president of Haiti's Electoral Council, said the runoff vote was being pushed back for security reasons, but he did not say when the election, already postponed twice before, would be rescheduled. The announcement led to jubilation from demonstrators marching to oppose the election. They danced on the streets of the capital Port-au-Prince, but the mood quickly darkened. Gunshots were fired as protesters clashed with police. The postponement is nevertheless expected to ease unrest after days of protest in the deeply impoverished country of about 10 million people at pains to rebuild from a devastating earthquake since 6 years ago and to re-emerge from decades of political dysfunction. Several Western nations, fearing a new era of instability in the Caribbean nation, have been assisting Haiti in its election preparations. The U.S. government alone has chipped in $30 million, but opposition candidate Jude Celestin said last week he would not take part in the election, alleging a first-round vote in October was rigged to favor the ruling party candidates. The fact that the Electoral Council was forced to give up the electoral farce is a victory for the Haitian people, said Jean-Charles Moise, another opposition candidate, who said fraud led to his first-round defeat. Hamstrung with weak institutions, Haiti has struggled to build a stable democracy since the overthrow of the 1957 to 1986 dictatorship of the Duvalier family and ensuing military coups and election fraud. A gunman in Canada has allegedly killed 2 people in his home and 2 more at a school. This high school in La Loche is where a man allegedly gunned down a teacher and an assistant. Canadian authorities say he first shot his 2 brothers at home before heading there. It's the country's worst school violence in a decade. Maureen Levy of the Canadian Police gave a news conference. He says, "I can tell you that we have 1 male in custody. Public safety is no longer at risk and we have secured the firearm. Officials haven't given a motive for the shooting." Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says the country's heartbroken. He says, "Obviously, this is every parent's worst nightmare. When I spoke with community leaders, they obviously expressed the community is reeling and all of us across the country's hearts are going out to the families and to the whole community. Canada has stricter gun laws than the United States and mass shootings are rare."
Reeling, and all of us across this country's hearts are going out to the families and to the whole community.
New Jersey Governor Chris Christie interrupts his Republican presidential campaign to tell residents we could get through the storm, we always do, in a news briefing. New Jersey Governor and Republican presidential hopeful Chris Christie left the campaign trail in New Hampshire on Friday to head home to deal with the effects of a monster snowstorm in his home state. Christie told reporters at a briefing, "We'll get through the storm, we always do," as he recounted what officials have done to prepare for the blizzard, which is expected to dump up to 30 inches of snow on parts of the Middle Atlantic. Parts of coastal New Jersey are also expected to suffer from the highest storm surge since Hurricane Sandy in 2012, but Christie said he has not ordered any evacuations yet. He added that officials will keep monitoring the situation in case it becomes worse than expected.
17th snow emergency in my 6 years, so we've done this before. We feel relatively confident in our ability to be able to do it well, but we're not taking our eye off the ball. We're working hard, make sure we get done what we need to get done.
A major winter storm in the U.S. barrels down on the Middle Atlantic states, threatening to bury some cities like Washington, D.C. in snow and coastal areas in New York and New Jersey in floodwaters. Even by East Coast standards, the monster blizzard that's hitting states up and down the Mid-Atlantic is promising to pack a punch. Streets in the nation's capital were largely empty even before the bulk of the potentially record before snow hit Washington. The storm delivered a wintry mix to much of the South as it traveled north to impact major cities as well as suburbs of DC, where they are expecting up to 2.5 feet of snow. That's 76 centimeters. Authorities across the East Coast were warning residents to stay off the roads, and AAA, the motorist advocacy group, said it was responding to thousands of roadside emergency calls on Friday. Asylum-seeking migrants face freezing temperatures on their journeys into Europe. Bundled-up families take a break from the cold at a shelter in a Serbian border town. They are part of the continuous flow of migrants from war-torn regions in the Middle East making their way through the Balkans into Central Europe. Aid agencies said many people aren't prepared for the chilly weather, and the risk of children freezing to death was very high. Migrants from Fallujah, Iraq, says, "It's too cold, but what can we do? We are wearing everything, but it's too cold rather." Although the numbers have dropped in recent months, 2,000 per day, down from 10,000, small European countries like Austria are feeling overwhelmed. A U.S. Coast Guard helicopter retrieved 2 sailors from a vessel off the Washington coast. U.S. Coast Guard helicopter rescues 2 mariners from a 52-foot Canadian-flagged sailing boat on Sunday. Video released by the Defense Department showed the MH-60 Jayhawk helicopter air crew hoisting the men from their boat 5 miles west of Westport, Washington. The helicopter was dispatched from Coast Guard Air Station Astoria in Warrenton, Oregon. Coast Guard officials said the sailors had been traveling for 10 days and were unable to return to port due to unsafe sea conditions and mechanical problems. Mexico's Colima or fire volcano bursts to life, spewing ash and gas high into the sky. Mexico's Colima or fire volcano spewed a large column of gas and ash high into a blue sky on Saturday. The ash cloud repeatedly shot more than 2,500 meters into the air. The explosion at the volcanic crater was registered at 3:42 p.m. local time. Located in the southwestern Mexican state of Colima, the fire volcano has been bursting to life since July 9 last year, including 3 eruptions on New Year's Eve. The fire volcano, officially known as the Colima volcano, is part of the Pacific's Ring of Fire. Mexico contains over 3,000 volcanoes, but only 14 are considered active. Migrants traveling through Serbia are suffering in the bitter cold as temperatures drop to 20 degrees Celsius, and aid agencies report cases of frostbite and hypothermia. They are arriving at reception centers shaking from the cold as temperatures along Serbia's border with Macedonia drop to minus 20 degrees Celsius. Many of these migrants come from warm weather countries like Syria, Iraq and Afghanistan and are struggling to cope as they make for Western Europe. An unidentified Syrian father of 3 said, "I didn't have to think much about weather in Syria. The children are having a harder time with it. The journey is difficult. We are all extremely tired. The weather here is bad, but what can we do for that?" Aid agencies in the Serbian capital, Belgrade, are reporting possible cases of frostbite and hypothermia. Some 500 migrants will finish move from makeshift accommodation to another part of the Calais jungle after police order. It's been called the jungle, a makeshift home for migrants near the French port city of Calais. Now for hundreds it's time to move on. The move follows an injunction by French police to free a 100-meter stretch along a nearby road. This was announced earlier this week when the French port city of Calais opened its first migrant shelters due to a house of 1,500 migrants previously living in squalor in the camp. A 26-year-old Irish volunteer says, "Today we were told that French police wanted to basically evict a section of the camp, but 200 meters of this, and I don't know how many tents and shelters, but hundreds, so I don't know what kind of tactic is this. But today we have to move all the tents and shelters." On the wall, under the bridge near the entrance to the jungle, is a piece by British artist Banksy. It shows Apple Steve Jobs with a bag on his shoulder, as if he too wants to move to a more promising place. These were the week's headlines for now. Before ending, let's go through the headlines once again. Obama unveils wage insurance plan to spur job seekers. U.S. hopes Saudi Arabia may reopen Tehran embassy. Chinese leader in Iran to discuss economy, regional crisis, State TV. Haiti postpones Sunday's presidential election as violence erupts. Gunman kills 4 in Canada's school shooting. We'll get through the storm, New Jersey governor says. Monster storm hits U.S. East Coast. Freezing temps threaten asylum seekers in Europe. U.S. Coast Guard rescues 2 mariners off the Washington coast. Mexico's Colima or fire volcano erupts. Bitter cold in Europe, but the migrants keep coming. Clearing out in Calais. You're up to date with our top stories so far here on Millennium TV, and don't forget to log into www.millenniumtv.net. Thank you for staying with us. Allah Hafiz.